The following statement is from a person buying fruit close to Hamra Main Street. He introduces himself and defines himself as a refugee. Interestingly, he doesn't say he is a refugee right away, but mentions, quote, refugee, mostly. This is what people say, after he talked about his financial struggles. In this chapter on alienation and poverty, I try to show how the poor are alienated by society and how they define themselves in relation to it, with the help of Dr. Rami el Ali, a philosophy professor in LAU.
الكل تعبان نفسه والكل هيك مر بالظروف هاي يعني انا اقرب مثال انا زلمه سوري جاي لاجئ هون يعني انا اكثر بيقول لك لاجئ.
On the one hand, as the impoverished person walks around, one thing that's noticeable is the indifference of others to their presence and to their condition. There's a whole class of society that, ignores the poor. It pretends like they're not there. It doesn't have to say hello to them. It just treats them in this very pragmatic way. Like, can you do this for me? I'll pay you such and such, But to not be spoken to not be looked at, to not have your condition, somebody check up on you, that, gets you to see the world in a particular way. So it's not just this indifference, but there's also hostility. For instance, a person could, just out of their own personal irritation, end up being rude or mean to a person of lower socioeconomic status, partly because they can, because people are not, always their best selves. For the person who's on the receiving end, they don't necessarily see this. They just see themselves as being treated, first of all, with indifference, second of all, by hostility, but also they seem to be socially invisible. They suffer from a sort of invisibility. So if you want, you could call it indifference, hostility, and now invisibility. And invisibility is the fact that, they don't appear anywhere. There are no characters that are the very poor in media. There's no attempt to address their condition or to speak to them. And in any case, they might be cut off from the media, but it's like society pretends like they're not there. This is very explicit in Lebanon, where people are literally digging through trash, and yet you have, politicians talking about, and the country as a whole talking about how it's religious or how it's political, when obviously, this is cashing out in nothing as far as actions go, and these people remain invisible, remain, trying to make a living out of a trash can. This produces, in a large sense, this alienation, a social alienation. It's like culture does not represent us. We are somewhere outside of it. And of course, we're outside of it. Whatever you think of yourself, it can't be that you yourself will discount yourself into nothing. So you have to build your own social circles. You have to build your own world, which can, kind of resist this sort of alienation that the world otherwise heaps upon you.
The following line is from a fruit seller near Hamra. I believe it shows the yearning for a tight helping community amongst the poor and between the lower and middle class, as the person hopes and asks that those who can provide a job for their jobless neighbor will do so.
انت ابن عمك مثلا فقير مثلا حاول لاقي له شغل تدبروا معه كده يعني في عالم ما تلاقي شغل الله يكون بالعون.
But think about how large now socially this gap becomes. It's like you don't speak the language of the others. They don't speak to you. They're nameless and you're nameless to them. And the people who are around you live in the same condition. In a way, there's a sort of normality. Not like I think you live your life thinking, my condition is exceptional. Obviously, there are many who are in your condition. But it also alienates you from culture at large, and also makes you very easily a tool for others from, these more well-off cultures. I mean, just think about, how many times it must be the case that the very poor end up voting when they don't understand what the process of voting is, when they know nothing about it, right, but end up doing it because it stands to give them some economic benefit, which can just give them a few minutes forward so that they can have time for themselves. There's also, maybe some hope, for optimism, because as society becomes more affluent, and hopefully more morally enlightened, maybe it can try to shrink this class of people that are marginalized because of their economic condition.
To decrease the alienation of the poor, I believe that economic inequality must decrease. I call LAU economics and political science students to sign a petition to commit to advocating for unemployment benefits in the Arab world. Sign the petition, and the job it is to simply be poor.wordpress.com.